Deep within your mind lies a hidden force, unseen yet ever present. This is the shadow, a reservoir of the emotions you've buried, the traits you've denied, the truths you've hidden from yourself. As Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The shadow doesn't simply disappear, it shapes your thoughts, actions, and relationships from behind the veil of awareness. Why do we create a shadow? From a young age, we learn what society considers good and bad. To gain approval, we suppress emotions like anger or fear, and even traits like ambition or creativity that might seem too bold. These rejected parts don't vanish, they're exiled to the unconscious, forming the shadow. Over time, it becomes a storehouse of all that we are unwilling to face, yet desperately need to understand. The shadow is not inherently negative. While it holds anger, jealousy, and fear, it can also contain hidden strengths like confidence or creativity that were suppressed along the way. Imagine it as a treasure chest buried in the dark. Shadow work is the act of unearthing that chest, confronting its contents and integrating them into your life. It's not about erasing your shadow, it's about embracing it. When you integrate the shadow, you reclaim the parts of yourself you've rejected. You gain freedom from the patterns it has imposed and discover untapped potential within. Shadow work is not an act of fixing what's broken. It's a path to becoming whole. The question isn't whether you have a shadow, it's whether you're willing to face it. The shadow doesn't stay silent, it moves through your life in subtle but powerful ways. Have you ever overreacted to a small comment or situation, only to wonder later why it affected you so deeply? That surge of anger or defensiveness often has nothing to do with the moment itself. It's your shadow bringing unresolved emotions to the surface. One of the shadow's most common tricks is projection. When we repress traits in ourselves, we see them reflected in others. Consider a time you harshly judged someone's arrogance. Was it truly their arrogance, or was it your own buried desire for recognition? Projection allows the shadow to remain hidden while it shapes your perception of the world. But its reach goes deeper. The shadow manifests in self-sabotage, the fear of failure that stops you from trying, the perfectionism that keeps you trapped in endless preparation. These behaviors often stem from wounds buried in the unconscious, a rejection that still stings, a fear of not being enough. The shadow, in its flawed way, tries to protect you from these feelings by avoiding risk or vulnerability. But in doing so, it holds you back. And yet, the shadow isn't your enemy. It's a part of you asking to be understood. Ignoring it only gives it more power. Like an untended wound, the shadow festers in silence, influencing your life in ways you don't see. But when you face it, you begin to unlock the gifts it holds. Strength, authenticity, creativity. The shadow may seem like a source of pain, but it's also the key to profound growth. The shadow doesn't announce itself, it slips into your life in subtle, often unrecognizable ways. Its presence can be felt in the moments when your reaction seems out of proportion to the situation. A burst of anger at a careless remark, a flood of defensiveness over minor criticism. These overreactions are rarely about the moment itself. They're echoes of something unresolved, something buried in the shadow. Avoidance is another clue. Think about the situations or emotions you steer clear of, confronting conflict, taking risks, sitting alone with your thoughts. The shadow thrives in avoidance. Each time you sidestep discomfort, you leave a part of yourself unexamined. What you avoid doesn't disappear, it gathers strength in the dark. Perhaps the most insidious sign of the shadow at work is projection. When you criticize others harshly, take a moment to ask, is it truly their behavior that bothers you? The traits you dislike most in others, arrogance, carelessness, neediness, are often reflections of qualities you've disowned in yourself. The shadow uses projection to remain hidden, making you see in others what you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. But the shadow's presence isn't confined to your emotions or relationships. It can show up in your body too. Chronic stress, fatigue, or tension can be signs of internal conflict, unresolved feelings that weigh heavily on the unconscious. Emotionally, the shadow may manifest as persistent guilt or shame, feelings that seem to linger without a clear cause. Not every overreaction or avoidance stems from the shadow. Anger can be justified and some fears are grounded in reality. But if patterns emerge, recurring conflicts, repeated fears, a sense that you're stuck in the same cycles, these are the breadcrumbs the shadow leaves behind. Recognizing these signs is the first step toward bringing the unconscious into the light. To confront the shadow, you must first acknowledge it. This simple act of recognition is both the hardest and the most important step. The shadow holds the truths you've avoided for years, but it also holds your freedom. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey to becoming whole by integrating the rejected parts of yourself. Wholeness isn't about perfection, it's about balance. So how do you begin? Start with curiosity. Shadow work is not about judgment or fixing yourself, it's about exploration. Journaling is a powerful tool to uncover your shadow. Reflect on your triggers, the moments that make you angry, defensive, or uneasy. Write down your reactions and ask yourself, what does this say about me? Over time, you'll start to see patterns, clues that point to the shadow's influence. Meditation is another way to meet your shadow. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine it as a presence before you. What does it look like? What does it want to tell you? Don't resist what arises, no matter how strange or uncomfortable it may feel. The shadow doesn't speak in words, it communicates through symbols and emotions. Trust the process. For some, this journey may require a guide. A therapist or mentor trained in depth psychology can help you navigate the complexities of the unconscious. They provide a safe space to confront what you've buried without being overwhelmed. The road isn't easy. The shadow holds pain, fear, and memories you've long avoided. But it also holds the key to your greatest strengths. The creativity, courage, and authenticity you've yet to fully embrace. To face the shadow is to reclaim the parts of yourself you've left behind. The question isn't whether you have a shadow, it's whether you're ready to meet it.